Hello and welcome to Rolling with Two. I'm Will, and with me as always is the person who will put a crown on dang near anything.
Sarah.
And today we're doing a two-player perspective and accessibility for Crown of Emara. Now if you want to check out our opinion, check out Rolling with Reviews, Crown of Emara, our other video for this game. Sarah, tell us a bit about this game.
All right. In Crown of Emara, players navigate two rondels to move two different markers on the score track. One rondel produces resources, while the other utilizes those resources to move two score markers. Be warned, only the lower of the two markers will be your score at the end of the game. Okay, Will, how does the game change for two players?
So in one of the rondels is the city track. There are different locations that'll have dials that need to be set up. Now these dials will indicate different things like how many resources are needed of this type to have a successful donation or gift to that spot. And then when that happens, the dial will rotate, changing that number. So there are, there's going to be on the monastery, on the castle, and then the construction zone will have its own dial, which will actually decrease in value as you give it stone.
Right.
So those setups are going to be different for each player count, and that's what you have to look for, and that's the only change for a two-player game. There is no bot. However, at the start of every of the rounds, you'll have an event card, and that'll give you a little rule where like Nanaman the king comes and changes something about the game for that round, and then he goes away until the next round. But that's about it.
That is true.
Okay.
All right, issues at a two-player count. Well, the advisors that are out in the different city spaces, they don't change as much because they're very costly. And with only two players, well, two players can only buy so quickly. So if you don't like what's out, they're going to kind of be stagnant until somebody actually buys one, and then a new one will come in.
Yeah. Fortunately, for the starter tiles, there are an excess of them. So you'll set up the starter tiles and then put all the rest of the starter tiles in the box and then play with, you know, the upper tier, I guess you'd call them, advisors. So you will still see from game to game, even at a two-player count, different advisors from game to game, since there is the extra starters to start the game.
Yes, definitely. At two players, though, what it does well is it is easier to get your craftsmen out onto the resource rondel. Having craftsmen out there means that when you move your main worker around, you'll get more from that space. So at two players, there's less competition for those spaces that are available because there's only 3 spaces.
Yeah, per resource type.
Right, and there's only 4 resources, so that's only 12 workers.
So somebody in a 4-player game is not putting out a...
Yep.
That's serious.
Yeah.
And that's important because each of the spots cost something different resource-wise.
Yes, they cost something different, and you gain victory points. Or sorry, not victory points. You gain population points because your score has 2 different... It's one score track, but you track 2 things, your population and the number of houses.
Yes, and whichever is lower is the one that's the score.
Right. But when you take a craftsman off, I do believe it's your population increases.
Yes.
So if you're unable to put a craftsman out for whatever reason, then that's points you're not getting.
Yeah. And also extra resources that you're probably not generating from that spot.
And you do need the resources.
Yes.
There's also less of a rush to actually fulfill the donations and the gifts on the city side because, again, there's only 2 of you. So it doesn't move as fast, which is just, it has a nice, more casual, like,
a pleasant pace.
A pleasant pace to it rather than this rush of, okay, well, 3 more people are going to go before it's my turn to do something again. Are they going to run that dial down so I barely get any benefit, or I have to pay a lot to be able to do something?
Yeah.
So that's what the dials do. It's how much do you have to pay, and that keeps going up, and how much do you get in reward, and that keeps going down the more people use the spaces.
Yes.
I think that's about it for a 2-player experience. So it doesn't really feel like it's very dependent.
Yeah, I would say mood-wise, it's low-key.
Yes, it is very low-key. All right, for accessibility, I will give them credit that they tried to make a more visually accessible side to the board. So the 2 rondelles plus the score track and the board that holds the nobility cards, there's 2 sides to them. There's a full color side, and then the other side is sepia tone, so the background is more muted. The problem being is all the stuff that's on top is kind of the same colors.
It's in the sepia family.
Right.
Of colors.
So it still kind of blends in, but it is better. So just to say, we did use the sepia tone side for the 2 main rondelles so that we could see the icons better. But some people may not really get much difference out of it. And for the score track and the nobility board, we left them full color because those ones didn't seem to be as much of an issue. So give them kudos, but it just, the graphic design didn't really go all the way in making it high contrast.
Right.
That was really the problem. The event cards. So the one thing about this game, they only use mini cards, and that kind of is a problem when you're trying to convey information. During setup, if you go with a randomized setup for where your houses start on the score track, because you could just start at, what is it, 35.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty normal, reasonable, and in fact, they say start at 35 for your first game. That way you have plenty of time to just move your population up, and then you flip-flop back and forth in the end game. But if you want to go random, you're supposed to see this tiny little number in the middle of the event card, and you're going to need a magnifying glass or to take a picture and zoom in because it's barely readable. Plus, there's icons left and right that are also supposed to be telling you where the
first player starts, I think.
On both rondelles. Yeah, on both rondelles. Those are tiny too. And considering what's on the card, there's no reason it needed to be this small. None whatsoever. Unless somebody was designing it on the computer and never saw the physical version to test the readability.
It never did a test print.
Yeah.
Well, I did a test print and it was a full-size piece of paper. It looked just fine.
Yeah. So that is unfortunate. Also unfortunate, again, since they're small cards, the advisors, they go out on the city board. They're small. They're going to be hard to see from a distance. So you're going to be picking them up a lot until you actually learn them. If you were good at I mean, there were a couple we learned really quick because they were significantly better than other ones, and we were looking for them.
Like that ability, I need that ability. I know it costs this, this, and this. Where is it?
Yeah, yeah. The player colors are your standard red, blue, green, yellow. That could be a problem for some colorblind folks. So the full player count might have issues if you have multiple people with colorblind accessibility challenges. So that's just something to definitely look at ahead of time and either use a Sharpie to mark the colors that are bad or find substitutes. That is something you could do. There's not too many, probably not the greatest thing you would want to have to do, but yeah. Okay, the donation and gift dials are red and brown. And even for me, those two colors are not that distinct. So you're supposed to put red. Actually, now I don't remember which one goes where. But it's supposed to
One goes on monastery, one goes on castle.
Yeah, I just can't remember which one's supposed to be which. The good news is the numbers are exactly the same. So nothing is printed differently. So if you mix them up, it literally will not matter.
It's more important that you have each resource at the right number.
Right, just to have it at the right number. And hopefully you don't get a copy like us, where one of the sides was literally printed in mirror image.
3?
No, the whole side. The 1, the 2, and the 3 are backwards.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because you're like, why is the little notch on the 1 on the wrong side? And then you looked at it, and then 3 became very obvious.
Yes.
And then 2's more of a Z.
Yeah, so that was a really weird one for us. But those, thankfully, were all the major issues we saw for accessibility. And what it does right, though, the resource pieces are all unique. Now, they're kind of similarly shaped, but they are different. I mean, they're all kind of rectangular.
Yeah, but
they're notched differently enough for you?
Yeah, that I could definitely tell, like, that's the grain, that's the wood, that's the stone, that's the cloth.
Okay, that's good.
It wasn't too hard.
Okay. The cognitive load is lighter. When we first started setting up the game, we were worried about all the cards that each player had.
Yes.
But you only draw 3 per round.
Well, we were also worried that, okay, we have to also manage these 2 rondelles, but the rondelles are only 4 spaces.
Right.
I'm like, okay, well, you have to worry about... No, you don't have that. It pares down all that cognitive load so that if you're like a lot of players that have problems with maybe timing in games and can't think so many steps ahead like your partner or the person that you normally play with, that's not a real problem here because you can only go out so far in a round that people can stick this in their head and it being okay. Yeah,
there are definitely challenges here, but it is all manageable. For most people are going to find it manageable. So we definitely feel like, as overwhelming as it seems when you first start reading the rules, it really is very accessible for the rondelles and for the planning aspect with the cards, because you only get 3 per turn. And as you place them in your 3 spots, well, as soon as you put a card in one spot, you no longer have that option. So now you only have 2 cards, you only have 2 spots. So your choices just get kind of easier because you don't have choices eventually.
Yeah, you're like, okay, well, I can only do this, so what's the best way to do that?
Yeah. And the iconography is distinct. I think they do a pretty good job there. Graphic...
Just
tiny graphic design could be better, high contrast, but at least the iconography is unique. You're not going to mix up symbols. And in the end, it's all open information. Even the 3 cards you're playing, there's really no reason they have to stay secret, because you cannot stop anybody. The only thing you can do is make things either more expensive or less rewarding.
Or beat someone to the advisors. But generally speaking, you're not going to do the same thing. It's just whatever it is you've got going, where you start, because everybody starts on different spaces. So you can't even start doing the same things. So your asymmetric starting already puts you at a different place. So you're not going to start off doing the same things. So, yep. That's it. All right. So, for 2 players.
I think so, yes. I think it's an enjoyable game at 2 players.
Yeah, honestly, I probably would prefer this at a 2-player game.
Agreed.
Because of the more low-key nature I see in a 2-player game. I'd feel probably a little bit more stressed out at higher player counts.
Right, it'd be harder for you to keep track. It'd be harder for me to keep track of what everybody's doing, which you really probably couldn't in a 4-player game.
Yeah.
There'd be too much going on, and it would be more stressful. So if you're looking for a more competitive, what's a good way to say high-strung?
High-strung.
No, but you know what I'm saying. It's more tense, more competitive.
Yeah, you want more tension.
More tension.
Just have players.
You're going to want a higher player count. But if you're looking for that low-key, more just casual feeling, then 2 players is really good.
Yes. Accessibility.
I'm going to say mostly yes. Like I said, there's some things are kind of a little too small. Some things are not really high contrast enough, and player colors could be an issue. So your mileage may vary, but I think for most people it's going to be okay.
Yeah, the fact that I can play a lot of this game open-handed and and just can ask you questions, accessibility-wise, it feels pretty good to me.
Yeah.
And I noticed, especially it being good for you, because sometimes cognitive, you can trip your own self up.
Yes.
And I've seen you like shut down. You're like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. I have definitely have trouble with both rondelle games and planning games where you have cards and you have to plan out how you're going to
do this, then this, then this.
I get tripped up on both aspects, and this is actually manageable for me, not overwhelming and enjoyable. So I guess that's a little bit of a hint into what we're going to talk about in our Rolling with Reviews.
I think you won both the games we played.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
One was really close, though.
Yes.
I know one was really super close, like 1 or 2 points off. But you're right. I think I just squeezed ahead on that last one.
Yes.
So there you go.
All right. And Sarah.
Yes.
What's wrong with this theme?
Oh, yeah. The theme doesn't make a lick of sense. The king is retiring.
Sort of.
Sort of. He's going to plan for his retirement and is going to try to find someone to replace him. You're all nobles? Trying to prove that you can noble?
Yes.
Doesn't make a lick of sense. Great game mechanisms, but it feels like they didn't even try with that one.
They mailed it in. All right, and why would you ever roll with just one when you can be
rolling with two?
If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach out to us on the various social media platforms at
Rolling with Two, that's TWO. We're on Blue Sky, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Discord, we have a channel on Tabletop Express. Check the show notes for the invite link.
If you have time, check out the other content Nanaman has found for you, because remember, he's rolling with you.